Hi everyone, welcome back to the Purple Source podcast. My name is Sara, I'm your host, and this is our 1-year anniversary episode. I am so thrilled because I can still remember, not that long ago, basically 365 days ago, we had very few listeners. I would say most of them were either my family members or my friends. But now, our Purple Source family expanded into 70 countries in the world. And I am so grateful and I feel so honored with all these amazing podcasts out there that you are dedicating some of your precious time to tune in weekly to listen to our interviews and our solo episodes. And for today's episode, we were thinking of dedicating this episode to some of your most beloved moments. So we hope you are going to love it. I always say animals find us. That's my way to put it in words. If you obviously use spiritual language, it could also be we have soul contracts. Everyone, a pet serves their purpose. Yesterday, when I was on a podcast, she shared actually a story that made me tear up. And she said she got her dog while she really wanted to get pregnant. So he had been her baby for a really long time. Once the baby was here, he passed away.
Yeah.
And it's, he served the purpose. He prepped her to also embody how it is to be a mom and to be okay, even if you have anxiety, and you don't need to be fully have fixed your anxiety to be a good mom. And yeah, it touched me so deeply in my heart. And I do really, really believe we serve a purpose in each other's lives. And for me, for example, I know Felix is really teaching me a lot of patience. And patience as in everything happens in its own divine timing. So, and he's showing me this in so many different ways. So I'm wondering, what are your thoughts on the bigger picture? But maybe also if we break it down to mirroring principle, especially when it comes to physical symptoms or also behavior.
Oh,
I know it's a loaded question.
I know. We might have to peel this one back in layers. I agree. I think the animals in our lives, for better or for worse, are here to teach us lessons of all kinds, whether that is truly to just learn how to love. That's kind of a big one. A lot of people that hold trauma or are unable to love themselves or other people, the animals can kind of come in and crack open their heart and give them that ability to, I'm going to get all weepy, give them the ability to learn how to love in a safe space. The more challenging behaviors are always, they're loaded with emotions and all sorts of stuff. And I have my own example of that, and I'll use him. So I adopted this dog. He had an interesting upbringing. He had 6 homes before he ended up being my forever dog, but he came with some baggage. So when he was born, he was taken from mama too soon. And then he had 6 different foster homes. Nobody really did much with him. So he just didn't know how to be a dog. And so he's extremely sensitive. He's reactive, fear, aggression. I mean, he's bit me. He has attacked my other dog. I mean, this was just a really complicated situation. But he also kind of embodies that mirroring. So he and I are very entangled. I brought him into the home. He was okay. But then when I realized that maybe he didn't quite fit in or he had some trauma that we had to work through, my anxiety spiked, my stress spiked, and so did his. And he's still like this to this day. Not quite as aggressive. We really navigated that. But the mirroring aspect, if I'm stressed and anxious, so is he. And he will actually start to develop tendencies, like he'll lick his feet, he'll start chewing. So he literally lets me know where I am on my spectrum. And it's like,
Same.
okay, yeah, it's like, all right, I got it. Like, we got to go for a walk now, or we just
Hmm.
need to decompress somehow. So he definitely mirrors me in a lot of ways, which is nice, but it's also kind of a pain in the butt because sometimes I want to be stressed and I need that, and I need him to not be, you know? So that's kind of something that animals do on the emotional field, and that's just one example. So he's teaching me kind of to recognize my own self-awareness and handle my anxiety, which is something that I have struggled with my whole life.
Hmm.
um and we kind of have it good now mostly, but but it's still touch and go. And then with some of my clients, there's physical attributes too. So if a
Hmm.
human has some physical discomforts, pain, illness, a lot of times the animals will embody that also and kind of mirror their physical pain backward or back to them. And
Hmm.
sometimes it's contractual, or sometimes it's just like, hey, like we need to address this, but you're not. So it kind of depends. It's very convoluted. There's tons of different contracts out there, but um yeah, I would just say check out your own animals and notice how they are
Mm.
interacting with you and what lessons they have to teach.
For me, this is one of the most fascinating. Feels like it's something I can think about all day. Like it's just, it makes me so excited. And I'm like, wow, isn't this just so insane? Like the mirroring and like, especially when you think of a rescue dog, like the dog traveled all these miles and it's just, and we have like similar challenges and things that we can heal on both ends. And what I find probably the most interesting is the physical part, because I think like fear and I think it's like with anything when we walk into a room, even with strangers, and there's this tension, like it immediately like can also make us feel tensed up. And what I find quite interesting that is the mirror principle when it's not yet that obvious. So with obvious, I mean, okay, the owner has digestive issues, the dog too. But interesting is, for example, if the owner is very anxious and the dog then starts to get ear infections, and ears are related in Chinese medicine a lot with the fear. So I find that even more interesting because I'm like, you gotta dive even deeper, and it's just so beautiful to see like how much they love us, that they are willing to go through certain things to also help us. And that's something I find amazing. And Felix picks up a lot on my energy and on my stress as well. And you know what I have started to do now? I have conversations with him where I say, I thank you so much for showing me that. But I want you to know we have a very strong bond, even if you don't pick up on it as much. And then, I try to cleanse him and I say, like, we have this strong bond, but we can let go of whatever you need to mirror me today. I know I'm stressed or I know I'm anxious about this. So I just keep telling him. And I just started a few days ago, but I do notice already a little shift in that.
I love that approach. I might have to recommend that to some of my people.
Hmm. It's just
But
communication again, right?
yeah, just being open. And I think
Hmm.
just acknowledging that they're here to show us and teach us certain
Yeah.
things is like step one,
Oh yeah, big
definitely.
step.
Yep.
Absolutely. And I listened to one of your interviews where you shared a story about a horse. And it really made me tear up. It made me also tear up when I shared it with someone else after I listened to it. So I hope today not again. But the horse was severely depressed and didn't do very well. Could you share that story? Because it is so moving and touching. And I just think it's such a beautiful example when it comes to how what an emotional depth animals can have.
This horse, the woman who contacted me, she was the direct caretaker. The horse's mom had moved with the intention of coming back for her horse at some point, but she was going through a divorce and a really complicated stage of life. So she was just like, I don't know, but for right now, you are the guardian, you are the caretaker of my horse. I'm just like, kind of keep me in the loop. And so the current guardian called me and just said, this horse is not doing well. Can you talk to her? She's losing weight. She's so depressed. It's like the sparkle in her eyes has just dimmed. And this had been a while. Her mom had left for a while. And so when I opened up that connection with this horse, she was just basically saying, I'm trying to hold space for my mom because she left. I didn't know where she went. I don't know when she's coming back, and I don't really know what to do. She's been gone for a while. And so this poor horse was just kind of in limbo. She didn't know how to move forward. She couldn't get any answers because nobody was really talking to her. And so she literally was just like, she would be standing out in the back corner of the field just with her head down low. Now I'm going to get all weepy because it's just so sad. And she was in a lovely facility with other horses, but she just like was in this space of grief. And so when we started talking to her, I could just feel her heart mourning and just that deep sadness. And so we explained to her that her mom really still loves her and that she wanted to come back, but she can't. Like, there's just no way. And so for this horse to call this other guardian mom from now on, that's just going to be the situation. She'll try to come back and visit as soon as she can, if that's possible. And this horse was just like, okay, now I know I can mourn and close that door. But I was trying to keep it open in case mama came back. And so as soon as she went through the mourning process and could move on, she started to gain weight again. She started getting a pep in her step. That sparkle came back, and she's doing wonderful now. She's healthy. She's lively. She is older, but she's still a working horse. Like, she takes kids for rides, and she's just like, you can feel the smiling radiating from her now. It's just a beautiful story.
The story is, it's so moving, and it shows on so many levels the connection. And I also find it interesting that the horse lost a lot of weight, and that the horse was mourning the mom, because very often also in us humans, losing weight is a mother wound. And it is related with something with the mom that we are longing for and missing. It's, this like, I'm fading away, so hopefully mom comes back and takes care of me. So, wow. And actually, I haven't thought about this before when I heard this part of your interview, but like, it totally rang the bell. And I'm like, wow, this makes so much sense that it happened this way. And how beautiful, like, how does this make you feel that that your conversation with that horse brought the horse back to life?
Oh, it just makes me cry. No, I'm just like going to be a weepy little mess now. The thing is I wish everybody could do this. I wish everybody were having these conversations with these animals. And I just feel so honored to be able to be that person, but I do wish everybody could do it.
Yeah.
So I'm so happy for the horse now. I still see her. She doesn't live very far from me, and it's just like, I'm just so happy to see her and see how she's thriving. It is really a beautiful ending to that story.
I think part of me was afraid to sit with what is, and I wanted to just kind of jump ahead, look around the corner, see what's coming ahead. I wanted to live fast, and I wanted to live without a real faith and without trusting that everything would be okay. Like, I needed to see what was around the corner for myself to know that everything was okay, rather than just believing that everything was going to be okay. And so those years, like the last 5 or 6 years, I became like a full-time poet and writer in 2019. And then this book came out in, I think, 2021. And it took a couple of years to kind of land on it, and to learn to walk a little slower, to actually give myself the grace to walk a little slower, to allow myself to trust that God was actually with me every step of the way, and that things were going to be all right. And so now when I share this with people, it's okay to walk a little slower. And people are like, I don't like doing it. It's like, well, I don't think anybody likes doing it. but I think it's a good thing for us to do. Yeah.
You mentioned, like we rush for life because we want the certainty that things are fine, or we rush for life because we don't think that things are fine.
Mm-hmm.
And it's so great to know that for the audience, because whenever I see myself rushing, other than I do really need to rush because I'm late, like time-wise, that's a whole other story. But if I'm like unnecessarily rushing myself, I'm like, okay, I gotta do this, and like, okay, and then like figuring things out. And I also see this with a lot of people that journal, for example, or meditate. They're doing this to get a guarantee and a certainty and answers. And like, whenever I see myself holding on to things and like wanting this guarantee and certainty, like I try to open my hands and I'm like, okay, let go so I can receive what God really wants me to receive. Because if I'm like, like have the reins really tight, there's nothing I can receive. Like it will like fall into my head. It will be a little difficult. And so I really like this mantra, walk a little slower. My mantra is life is my friend.
Oh, I like that too.
And similar to what you said, people say like, oh, I don't like to walk a little slower. To me, they say, no, how can I believe that if like right now things are not good? Yeah. And then I explain like, it doesn't mean that life is always good. It means life is your friend also when things get tough. Like life provides you with the resilience, the gratitude, with the right people, the right podcasts, the right poems, whatever your heart, your mind, your spirit and soul need to go get through the darkness and see the light again and believe in the light till you see it. So yeah, I think it's great to have a personal mantra just to repeat it throughout the day, whatever is happening.
My other mantra, I walk a little slower is one. And the other one that I often say is that I'm just happy to be here. And it's true. Some days I wake up and I'm just happy to be here. And then sometimes I'm just the first word and I'm just the last word where I'm just kind of here. I'm just here. But kind of similar to what life is my friend. Like there are days where like life is, you know this, it's just like amazing. Like the sun is shining, people are kind, the internet correctly connects, right? Like it's just a great day. Nothing goes wrong and you're just happy to be here. And then there's those days where the internet doesn't connect and you need it to, and your back just hurts and people aren't nice to you and you're not nice to yourself and it's just cloudy and gloomy and you're just kind of here. But the reminder is, like I am here and I get to enjoy this gift of life. So I am just happy to be here, even if I am just here.
It's so beautiful how you have two little versions of the mantra to, when it's easy to say that day, I'm happy to be here. And as you mentioned, some days it's more difficult, especially when life throws all sorts of things at us. And even more so when it's like really heartbreaking things.
Yeah.
So it's good to have this, okay, I'm here. And I also see this like God saying, I'm here.
True. Yeah.
Yeah.
You can't get away from that. Like where you are is right where he is. And that is a good place to be. Absolutely.
This brings me to my next question. You might not remember that either, that you wrote that. It's hilarious. Two things. Life is not a puzzle to solve, but a gift to enjoy. So very matching to what you just said. And then the other one is, in the midst of uncertainty and unknown, they're already and not yet, the hopes and fears, we can easily forget that life was meant to be enjoyed. How do you think that faith can help people to embrace the present moment, regardless of what they may feel is missing in their life? And when I say faith, I want to maybe explain a little bit what I mean by that. Because we have in the audience people of all sorts of beliefs. And I always welcome anyone. And I always say, it's not, I personally call him God, but I personally think it's not so important the name we put on what we believe in, but to come, like remember we all believe in something, and that's what we have together. It's not so important to have the discussion about like, what do you call it? What do I call it? Is it better or not? But to say, okay, what connects all of us, there is something higher and we're just humans. And that higher force helps us through life and also makes life better. So that's just what I wanted to.
I love that you said we are just humans. And I think like for me, I'm like, that nails it. Like we are just like, we're just humans. And I mean, as I've talked kind of in the, throughout the podcast already, like I believe in like Jesus, like that is like, that's my guy. And so for me, like when we talk about how like life is not a puzzle to solve, but a gift to enjoy, or how I easily forget that life was meant to be enjoyed. I think my personal faith ties me to one who he's a good gift giver. I have my friend told me a while ago, like she said this, and it's kind of changed my way of how I see God. But when have you ever gone like to try on shoes before? And they're like, hey, do you have this size? They're like, oh, no, but we have it in the back, or you're at a restaurant or you're at the grocery store and you're like, hey, do you have any bananas? And it's like, well, there's more in the back. I'll go get them out. And she reminded me that our God is a God who says there's more in the back. Like he's good at, first of all, surprising us, hearing us, being with us, but also filling our empty hands with good things. So there's always more in the back. And I think faith allows me to slow down, to walk a little slower, to believe that life is my friend, for me to be here, and to believe that there is more in the back, that I am not forgotten, that I'm not alone, that I am not just floating through this life, but that I am seen and known by a good God who cares for his children.
You said earlier you contributed a lot to your own misery. What advice do you have for people who are living in victimhood and contribute a lot to their own misery, whether they're conscious of it or not?
Yeah. The first one's a hard truth, which is nothing will change until you do. And you won't become an autonomous and free human as long as you keep playing the victim. And this is not to say that sometimes we're not victim to life. Of course we are. But do I think that sometimes we take on that role when it's really not our role? And do we hide behind that role? I do. And so I think either you're doing it consciously or super unconsciously. I don't want you to be the victim, not because that's bad. I just don't want you to be the victim because that's not fulfilling. I want you to have a really fulfilling life. I want you to feel autonomous and free and courageous and empowered. And I want you to play with life. Life is so interesting. It's like you get a blob of clay and then you get to decide what you want to do. And then other people will come and poke at it and you'll be like, okay, that kind of ruined the shape. How do I work around it? How do I still make it into that mug I was hoping to have at the end of the process? Or maybe you're like, I don't want the mug anymore. Now I want a bowl. The point is, I really want you to see life as something that's yours and something that's even fun, may I say, like an absurd and kind of pointless, but also meaningful in the best ways. And I just don't think that you can have those feelings and that excitement and that vitality and that courageousness if you feel like you're powerless. And that's what victimhood does. It takes away your power. And I always want people to feel power because it does belong to you.
I want people to really let this sink in because it's so empowering what you just said. Like, it's our life, we own it, and it's supposed to be fun. And it's supposed to be full of joy and fulfilling and full of color. And of course, a day-to-day life might not always be the most fun, but we are here to enjoy life. And does that mean that there are never rough seasons? No. But it means we can, we can choose to nevertheless to be grateful and to have fun. Because I see often the missing link in life, whether it's in relationships, for health, or for success, is fun. And allowing ourselves to be playful and to joke around and to laugh about ourselves and to make mistakes and to not take things so seriously and to dance and, just to do whatever the F you want.
I know. And here's the thing. I think we need to take life less seriously and take more responsibility. But usually most people take less responsibility and just take life more seriously. It's such a weird where I think take responsibility for what you're doing, but then have fun with it. And I think that that's just so important. If you're not going to have fun, if you're not going to enjoy this life, at the same time, I do want to say that your relationship to suffering can also change. I remember my therapist telling me, until you see beauty in suffering, you're going to run away from it. And I remember the first time I cried on the floor and went, this is kind of beautiful, was genuinely the day that changed my life. Because for me, it was like, oh no, I see the beauty of my own emotion. I see the beauty of how visceral this is. I see the beauty of my body heaving for air. I feel the warm tears. I see how there is beauty in this suffering, in this moment. And that was life-changing for me. And so I'm not saying look for silver linings and be super positive all the time, but I think we do need to become more intimate with our suffering and not be so scared of it, but understand that there is meaning and beauty in it, and it's going to happen regardless. So you might as well have a healthy relationship to it.
I so feel you. When my grandmother passed away, I was, wow, it just hit me so hard. I was really broken into 1,000 pieces. And the day when my healing started was when I sat down and allowed myself to feel whatever I felt.
Wow.
And it was, and I was also, writing a book about it. And it's a journey. And on some days I was like, wow. Okay, in the morning I was sad, and at lunchtime I was angry, and in the afternoon I was a little frustrated, but I have this sense of happiness inside myself. What is happening? I got very confused by that, but then I noticed I have this sense of happiness inside me because I allowed myself to feel it all. And I love to compare it with a rainbow, because what makes the rainbow beautiful? It's the totality of all its colors. And the rainbow holds space, not for its favorite color, pink only, but for all the colors, And I think that's how it is for us as well. If we hold space, and of course, some emotions are more comfortable than the others, that will never change. But if we hold space for that, we will also see, wow, I'm grateful that I have someone that I can, miss. And I'm so grateful that I got to experience the most beautiful gift, which is love. And I think when we allow ourselves to feel all of that, it's great.
The other thing that I'll say is a lot of times people take in wounded or troubled animals and they rely on other experts for suggestions. They go to trainers, they go to veterinarians. And I'm not saying that some trainers and some veterinarians aren't wonderful, but what I would say most of all is trust your own instincts. I've heard crazy stories like a trainer saying, oh my God, that's an aggressive dog, you should euthanize them. And of course the people don't, and they end up being a wonderful animal. So some experts give wonderful advice, and some experts can't see the animal in front of them, and they're just going to slap a label onto them, and it's not going to be the right advice. So trust your own instincts and do what you think is right, and don't necessarily hand over your power to someone else just because they're the expert in the room. And then I guess the last thing I would say is spend some time shutting off your phone, switching off your computer, switching off the television, and just sitting in a comfortable place. You don't have to pet the animal to bond with them. You don't have to hold the animal to connect with them. Just be in the same space as them, wherever they're comfortable being. And you can look in them in the eye. You can talk to them. Let them know all the wonderful things you think about them, that they're beautiful and they're brave and they're strong and that you've waited for them and you're so lucky to have them. And then paint the picture of what their life is going to look like. Give them some hope. Let them know that you're going to go for long walks and you're going to take them to the beach or the snow or the mountains, that you're going to love them for the rest of their lives and that you're sorry for what happened to them before, but you're going to spend every single day for the rest of their lives making it up to them. And let them know why you love them. Those conversations matter because I really, truly believe that animals understand every word that we say.
Mm. I love it. It's just so much wealth of wisdom you're sharing. There's so much I want to say and also ask. I have so many extra questions now. So one thing I want to say, like what really helps me when it comes to any kind of animal, whether it's someone with trauma or getting a new dog or babysitting someone else's dog, always humanizing the situation and thinking, if I was moving to someone else's home, how long would it take me to feel comfortable? Or do I consider 4 years after having been dumped by my mother or whoever, would 4 years sound like a long time? So I think sometimes taking that situation and transferring it to a human example really helps. And I love what you said about it doesn't just need holding them and petting them. I see it as a relationship. If I am starting to be in a relationship with someone, whether it's romantic or a friendship or a neighbor, I talk. And I say what I appreciate about them. I acknowledge what they feel. I take time getting to know them. And I love what you said about the animal communication part, because when we get to know someone, it's also about getting to know what was before that. So we can be more mindful of their wounds and their triggers and know, okay, if I do, if we walk in the dark and we pass a black Labrador, he will get a freak out because something happened with a black Labrador in the dark. And just knowing and then to help him or her to build new positive associations and know next time the situation can be safe. So I think whatever helps me a lot is like to say, if this dog or this cat or any other animal would be a person, how would I approach it? I think that really often helps.
Let me tell you the story of a cat, Luca. I was driving the animal ambulance, and we got a call that a kitten, was attacked by a dog, and the owner called the animal ambulance because the owner could not drive to the vet himself. So I got there, and there I saw Luca. Luca sat on the couch, and what had happened was that Luca was small, was a kitten, and he got attacked by a bigger dog, and the dog had taken the whole head of Luca in his mouth and bit. So one of Luca's eyes had popped out. His jaw was completely damaged, broken. But he was still conscious, and he was sitting there, and it was so it breaks your heart, that kind of images. But anyhow, so I brought him to the veterinarian that was closest by. And the veterinarian said, well, yeah, I need to remove that eye. I cannot save that. The jaw needs surgery. I need to x-ray the skull to see if there are any damages there. So I'm going to call the owner because it needs to be paid. So I was sitting there in the treatment room waiting for him to come back with Luca, and Luca was still conscious, and he was so disarming, so still friendly, because many animals, when they get injured, they get into the protection and sometimes attack. But he did the opposite. So then the veterinarian came back, and he said, "Well, the owner is not going to pay for all those things, unfortunately. So I have to put Luca to sleep. Sorry, but I'm not going to pay for it either." So then, because in those hours I had gotten into some connection with Luca, so I said, no, I'm going to pay for it. So if you think that he has a chance of having a good life, then please treat him. And so that same evening, the eye was removed. The next morning, the jaw got surgery. A week later, another surgery. The skull was all fine. So there was the veterinarian was saying, well, this cat can lead a good life. He can cope with having one eye. That's not a problem. And well, you can guess what happened then. I adopted Luca a few months later after he recovered, and he died last year. But after 14 years, he living with us, and I can tell you that he was one of the most happy-go-lucky animals that I've ever met. So everyone in the street knew Luca, and they called him the little pirate because he had only one eye. And Luca got along with our dogs very well. He always joined me the evening walks. When I walked the dogs, he joined. He walked with us, and then I had to cross a busy street, and so I told him always to wait, because that was dangerous. I crossed the street with the dogs. He waited in the garden until we returned, half an hour, 45 minutes later, and there he was waiting for us, and he joined us again and walked back home. And so such a happy, uncomplicated life that he led, with an open mind, and despite his traumas. And he also managed to live together with our dogs, despite the fact that another dog had done so much damage to him, which I think if it's one life lesson, then this was. I keep on thinking of him. Maybe not every day, but very often, about how he did that, how he managed that to despite all the suffering and the traumas, have that wonderful life.
You probably saw it made me tear up. It's such a heartwarming, like from a heartbreaking to a heartwarming story. It's, I think, one of the biggest lessons for myself as well, what we can learn from animals, how they bounce back from trauma, whatever the trauma looked like. But if we give them the opportunity and the time and the space, they open their heart again, and they open their mind again, and they fully embrace life. And I think that's something as humans, if we can just get a little bit more of that, I think our life would be so much better. Renée, you currently have a dog, right? A boxer?
I do. Yes. Yeah.
Could you tell us a little bit about your dog?
Oh my goodness. So she has brought such joy. We had lost our previous boxer, and I'm someone who tends to need to mourn and grieve for a while, but after a certain amount of months and everything, we were really in the market. And of course, it was during COVID. And, there wasn't a shelter around that had another boxer. I love boxers. I've had 5 of them in my life. They just fit really, really well with me. Unfortunately, they are one of the number 1 breeds that get cancer. It is genetic since the 50s, but they are just great. And I ended up finding this 4.5-year-old female. I had never had a female. I had had 5 males before. And she had had 2 litters of puppies, so her mammary glands or her teats were hanging down. And what I never knew, I've been a veterinarian for decades, I never realized that people don't want to adopt female dogs that have had puppies because they have sort of those hanging down teats and they don't like it, or they'll get them removed. And I'm thinking, oh my God, that's horrible, right? And so as a boxer, she's a little wrinkly and drools a little bit and has a little gray around her muzzle, and was just spayed. And I felt like this is my little soulmate right now. We're, 2 women a little bit older, and hopefully I'm not drooling just yet, but I had the similar surgery, and she truly has brought and continues to bring such joy to all of our lives. It's been great. She's made my life better.
Such a beautiful story. What's your dog's name?
Dusty,
Dusty.
short for Stardust. My son loves, space and cosmology and all that.
Oh, I love that. And isn't it incredible how, I always believe dogs find us.
Totally. Yes. I agree. So it kind of leads us to a little bit of a sad thing. People say, oh my gosh, isn't it so hard being a veterinarian and having to euthanize? And I think the hardest thing is to go through it with your own animal. As a veterinarian, I get teary and cry sometimes every single week. But to not only go through it yourself, but then to do it with your own child is really, really hard, right? Because as a parent, you want to be the mama bear or papa bear and protect them. And yet they need to feel these feelings in order to heal, in order to grow and mature. And when I was going through that with our previous dog and my son, I told him, and I firmly believe this, that we all want our dogs or cats to live so much longer than their natural lifespans, but their natural lifespans are so much shorter than ours. But I firmly believe that each dog is put into our lives at just the right time, at just the right moment to teach us something, to fill us up, sometimes not having any clue that I needed to learn that lesson or that it was going to improve my life in such a different way. And so I'm so fortunate to have had these dogs in my life that have taught me. And while it doesn't make the pain of the loss go away, hopefully it is truthfully consoling enough to realize, there's a whole bigger picture in this universe. And we're just fortunate to be a part of that.
It's so touching, and I deeply resonate with the bigger picture. And sometimes it might even take years to understand, why did we meet that dog at that time? Whether it's some of your patients or a dog you have yourself or someone else's dog. And even with people, I think that's actually a universal philosophy, is anything and anyone is here to teach us something. And sometimes it might take time to understand that lesson. And what I find very interesting, so in traditional Chinese medicine, they say the male energy is, like doing and achieving and making. And the female energy is like resting and self-care and introspection. And I find it very interesting that you had male dogs throughout your life. And after you took more focus and priority in self-care, that you chose a female dog. Of course, it could be a coincidence, but that was my first thought. I was like, wow, I think, like, how we talked before about mirroring the energies and everything, that
Yes,
even could be the case.
that's fantastic. I love that thought. Yeah.
Allan, you said earlier that you've learned a lot from your patients. I'm wondering, what have you learned from them, particularly when it comes to hope and also the power hope can have in the process of healing and health?
So I think the first thing is that hope is an absolute necessity for survival. When people lose hope, and we know this from people who've been in survival situations in concentration camps, in prison, etc. When people lose hope, they die. And the mythology, the Greek mythology, is that Pandora got the box with all of the evils and sins of the world in it, and she was told never to open it, but she opened it anyway, and then she, and all of them escaped out into the world, and then she slammed it shut. But then she realized there was one thing left, and she looked in, and it was hope that then was the last to escape. So the evils of humanity are also buffered by hope. I think we forget what a necessity it is. I've seen situations with my patients early on where, they would ask me, tell me when the end is coming and that sort of thing. And, I would try to be very honest and fulfill that commitment. And it took me a long time before I realized they'll know when the end is coming, and they'll tell me, and I'll tell them I'll be there for you. But taking away people's hope is a terrible, terrible mistake. And you always see, for example, when I talk in front of groups of doctors, I go, well, how many of you have had a patient where they've had a terrible disease and they're not going to live very long, and then they say something like, well, I have to survive for the next 8 months because my granddaughter's getting married, or my son's coming back from a tour in Iraq, or whatever. And I said, and how many times do they make it? And almost 100% of the time they make it. And I go, how? And I said, the answer is their emotional power carries them when their biologic power gives out. So I think of hope as an incredible gift, a kind of a medication, if you will, that amplifies our response to things. And no doctor anywhere has the right to take it away. I've had doctors say, well, I don't want them to have false hope. And as Andy Weil, is a friend of mine in integrative medicine, says, what's false hope? There is no such thing as false hope. Hope is the desire to prevail against overwhelming odds. There is no such thing as false hope. There's just hope. And so, we have this, oh, you don't want to give them false hope. Yes, I want to give them hope. Not false hope, but hope. And for every situation I've encountered, there is hope. I've never seen a situation where you go, 100% of them die no matter what. You can absolutely take it to the bank and it'll happen within 4 weeks. And here you go. There's none of that. We're all very different. And I think we can do a great job with big statistics, looking at populations. We do a terrible job with an N of 1. I can't tell you what's going to happen with an N of 1. It's all over the place. It's like that pinball bouncing back and forth. You have no idea where it's going to land. So I think you have to be humble, and I think you also have to realize what a horrible thing it is to be in a place where there is no hope, and that's not something you ever want to do on purpose for a human being and another human being. I just think of it as the magic. It's just one more tool in our arsenal to make people better. And there's a wonderful surgeon named Franny Moore, very famous surgeon back in Boston. And he once said to me, there is no more confounding factor in all of medicine than the patient's earnest desire to attend to a positive outcome, meaning patients want to get better and feel better and be cured. And it's confounding because we can't control that. We can't take it out of the equation. It's always there.
You're supposed to either go into economics or psychology, not dance, because if you want to be successful, this is the line of work you should do. So I think that really settled in me. So I had this society pressure, perhaps, or just in general, that understanding that we'll live by. But as I lived through it, I realized that there are multiple purposes, and those purposes we create. And it's not just one purpose that you have, but there are many of them. But if you don't know what it is, it's totally okay, and it's totally normal. I've learned that too through hard way, to understand that you're not on anyone's timeline. So there are people that discover their journey in life or their purpose when they're 50 and 60. So, and there are some that are born and they're like, I know exactly what I'm going to do, and they just go for it. So everyone is different, and it's totally okay. But all of these thoughts, as I'm going through the transition with my breakup, with revisiting, learning, and building my career, not only I've learned that I can make a purposeful living, being intentional, making connections, tap into something that I've liked. I've always feel like I naturally wanted to help people. And, my friends always jokes like, go to Lena. She'll talk to you. She'll make you feel better. It was just like maybe a natural thing of mine where people felt safe to come and talk. Not necessarily I had a full life experience and psychological degree, but something about it. And it made me feel good because I wasn't only showing up for myself, taking care of myself and being intentional with my life, but I'm also showing up for other people, making them feel good, making meaningful connections. So that doctor's office job was just like a live learning journey for me that made me realize that it's not what I've envisioned as far as the purpose. And the more I started tapping into the office work and building those connections and talking to people, it opened up more conversations. It got me to promotions and led me to growth. I ended up managing that office, helping doctor open up another office. And that led me into getting promoted and scoring this awesome job at the hospital and working emergency department. And it's just, when you take a moment to focus and see how do you want to feel instead of what I'm supposed to do, but how do I want to feel? How do I want to demonstrate myself? How do I want to make others feel around me? That was my purpose. And that's how my whole medical journey started. I just worked. It just happened to be that I worked doctors for doctors, and my last job working with the ketamine clinic and helping people through the journey as well.
Before we transition into your current chapter, I want to just quickly repeat once more for the audience to really let this sink in, because you said so many powerful messages. And one of them is we can have multiple purposes. And it's why it's so important to me to repeat that, because I get so many messages and also questions. Oh my God, people have this purpose anxiety. They don't know what their purpose is. They're scared they will fail it and would never meet and never figure it out. And I also always tell them your purpose can evolve. It's not something you need to commit once you graduate and stick to it your entire life. And also in the end, what is purpose? It is, being true to our own gifts and being true to our own nature and being of service and doing what makes us feel good. And that comes to the second big message you were sharing. Sometimes when we're so stuck with finding our purpose, let's take a step back and actually ask ourselves, rather than what should I be doing, more like, how do I want to feel?
Exactly.
So that's why I really wanted to repeat those two messages.
Yes. And I hope it sinks in for sure for other people, because everyone wants to rush it. That's how I felt. And I'm sure some people can relate to it. I wanted to rush to get to that. This is it.
Mm-hmm.
Without even realizing, like, what do I want from this? How do I want to feel? And, Gary Vee, if anyone knows him, he's very straightforward with his messages. And I love what he said once. If you don't know what your passion is, just try things. Because sometimes you don't even know what you're passionate about. Through my journey with the medical office, I didn't know that I'm really compassionate and I have a particular gift to nurture, to help people, maybe through my skills. But the more I tapped into it, the more I felt like I was able to contribute. And that was something. So explore, figure out your passions, your interests, because that's where also you can lie down, following your heart pretty much.
It's a wrap for today, everyone. We hope you loved this episode as much as we did. And I was very proud to look back to some of your most beloved moments, because we have had so many great interview guests and just so many topics that are covered and so many nuggets of wisdom. And I can't wait to experience what this next year holds for us. And I'm very much looking forward to walking this path with you. See you next Wednesday.